Just days after inking a deal to end the war, is Mojtaba now mocking the United States by showcasing the very damage his forces claim to have inflicted on American power? By parading fresh images of missile and drone strikes, is Iran showing off its strike power and brandishing what it calls proof of serious damage to U.S. bases across the region? Are U.S. bases in Bahrain, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia now so scarred by Iran's barrages that Tehran can claim parts of America's regional footprint have been damaged beyond easy repair? With new satellite images, is Iran trying to reveal the true extent of destruction at U.S. sites, challenging Washington's efforts to downplay how hard its facilities were hit? As Trump's own cabinet warns of stretched budgets after months of strikes, is Mojtaba quietly laughing, convinced that the Iran war has left America too broke for another round? On June 18, the IRGC released new satellite images of U.S. bases hit during the Iran war, turning battlefield damage into a post-ceasefire propaganda display. Iranian outlets linked the imagery to Operation True Promise 4, their name for a wave of retaliatory strikes they say answered earlier U.S. and Israeli attacks. Newly released maps highlight U.S. bases and Israeli sites that Iran claims were struck in coordinated waves of missiles and drones, underscoring the breadth of its target list. Iranian strikes were directed at U.S. military facilities across West Asia as well as at Israeli positions, signaling that Tehran was willing to hit multiple fronts at once. Tehran claims these attacks proved its missiles and drones can reach heavily fortified American and Israeli hubs, not just exposed outposts on the edge of the map. Iran also says the operation was designed to hit energy and logistics networks across the Gulf, aiming at the fuel and supply lines that keep U.S. forces moving. According to Iranian accounts, refineries and LNG facilities in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Qatar were forced into temporary shutdowns, showing how quickly regional energy can be disrupted. Iranian media say that on March 1st, a strike hit a U.S. tactical operations center inside Kuwait, putting one of Washington's forward command posts directly in the crosshairs. Reports from Tehran claim a low-cost drone slipped past defenses, destroyed key parts of the facility and caused casualties among U.S. personnel on the ground. The IRGC presents that incident as proof that expensive American air defenses can be penetrated by cheap systems, reinforcing its message about asymmetric warfare. In Bahrain, Iranian missiles and drones are said to have damaged buildings near U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet facilities, bringing the fight dangerously close to a core maritime command. These attacks, if accurate, suggest Iran can hold deeply entrenched maritime command hubs at risk, not just commercial shipping lanes and isolated piers. The IRGC also says a major strike on March 27 hit Prince Sultan Air Base deep inside Saudi Arabia, a site long used as a key U.S. air hub. Iranian briefings claim 6 ballistic missiles and 29 drones, including Shahed-type models, were launched in that single attack, overwhelming the local defenses. Tehran further claims a U.S. E-3 Sentry surveillance jet was destroyed on the ground during the Prince Sultan strike, knocking out a prized airborne radar asset. Iranian sources add that several KC-135 refueling tankers were damaged or destroyed and that up to 15 U.S. troops were wounded, though Washington has not confirmed those numbers. By releasing these new satellite images now, Iran is sending a blunt message that U.S. bases remain vulnerable in any future escalation, even as a ceasefire and diplomacy take center stage. The Pentagon reportedly told lawmakers it needs roughly $80 billion to cover costs linked to the Iran war as well as other military expenses, according to a Wall Street Journal report. Deputy Defense Secretary Stephen Feinberg is said to have discussed the funding requirement during a series of calls with members of Congress. The Pentagon reportedly warned that several military services could face budget shortfalls as early as this summer without additional funding. According to the Wall Street Journal, a new wartime spending request could be submitted to Congress within the coming days. A Pentagon official told Reuters in April that the conflict with Iran had already cost the United States about $25 billion at that stage. The overall financial burden of the war has remained a subject of intense debate and disagreement on Capitol Hill, Reuters previously reported. An earlier proposal seeking around $200 billion in war-related funding reportedly encountered significant resistance from lawmakers. White House Budget Director Russell Vought said in April that the administration still did not have a final estimate for the total cost of the conflict. Vought made those remarks while defending President Donald Trump's proposed $1.5 trillion military budget before lawmakers. President Donald Trump has rejected claims that the Iran war exposed limits to America's ability to project power on the global stage. In an interview with the Axios show, Trump argued that the conflict ultimately demonstrated U.S. strength rather than weakness. Asked what the war taught him about the limits of his authority, the president responded with a blunt message: "There are no limits." Trump said he was not humbled by the conflict, even though the fighting ended with a memorandum of understanding rather than total victory. The president entered the war demanding Iran's unconditional surrender, but ultimately agreed to a more limited diplomatic framework aimed at ending hostilities. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "I haven't learned that lesson yet. I know there are, but there are no limits. We defeated them totally militarily, and the MOU is probably unconditional surrender. Who else could have done a blockade like that? I did a naval blockade where not one ship was able to get through. Some tried. It didn't last very long. The only way I can get tougher is if I go in there for another 2 or 3 weeks and continue to bomb the hell out of them." Right. But what does that get us? The Strait of Hormuz will not be open. We wouldn't have oil for months. As long as you're dropping bombs, that thing is automatically closed. This is the kind of thing that could cause a worldwide depression." Unquote. Despite his tough rhetoric, President Trump acknowledged that continuing the war would have carried significant risks for the United States and the global economy. The president said the only way to become tougher would have been to extend the bombing campaign against Iran. Trump questioned what such a strategy would achieve beyond prolonging the conflict and increasing instability across the region. He warned that a longer war could have kept the Strait of Hormuz closed to commercial shipping for an extended period. According to Trump, as long as bombs were falling, normal maritime traffic through the strategic waterway would have remained impossible. U.S. President Donald Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian have formally signed the Memorandum of Understanding. The 14-point agreement is designed to end hostilities between the two countries and reopen the Strait of Hormuz to normal navigation. The memorandum establishes a 60-day ceasefire period during which both sides will pursue negotiations on a broader final agreement. Trump signed the document during a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris on June 18. Meanwhile, President Pezeshkian signed the memorandum in Iran, completing the process from Tehran's side. The agreement begins with a region-wide ceasefire, aiming to halt hostilities and lay the groundwork for a permanent end to the conflict. Both sides have pledged to respect each other's sovereignty and avoid interference in internal affairs, signaling a shift toward de-escalation. Washington and Tehran have set a 60-day deadline to negotiate a broader final agreement, with an option to extend talks if needed. The United States has agreed to begin lifting its naval blockade, while Iran will gradually restore normal shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has agreed to ensure free and safe passage for commercial vessels traveling between the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman for a limited period of 60 days. The memorandum outlines plans for a massive $300 billion economic development initiative aimed at supporting Iran's recovery. The United States has agreed in principle to discuss sanctions relief as part of a broader and mutually accepted final settlement. Iran has reaffirmed that it will not pursue nuclear weapons, while both sides work on a framework for managing enriched uranium. Until a final agreement is reached, Iran will maintain its current nuclear activities and the US will avoid new sanctions or military deployments. The agreement allows for sanctions waivers that could enable Iranian oil exports and related financial services to resume. Both sides will explore pathways toward financial normalization, including discussions on frozen assets and economic access. Once initial commitments are implemented, negotiations will expand to address all remaining issues required for a lasting settlement. Progress toward a final agreement will depend on both sides demonstrating compliance with ceasefire and maritime obligations. Any final agreement is expected to be submitted to the United Nations Security Council for international legal backing and enforcement.